The 1970s were the golden age of Australian muscle cars, before emissions regulations strangled performance, before the Supercar Scare killed development, before politicians decided that fast cars were a problem that needed solving. For a few brief years, Australian manufacturers built some of the fastest production cars in the world. Not just fast for Australia, fast compared to anything coming out of Detroit, Europe, or even Japan. What you are about to see are the 10 fastest street-legal cars you could buy in Australia during the 1970s. And the performance numbers, most of them are still impressive today. The Chrysler Valiant Charger E38 started the six-cylinder performance war in Australia. It was the predecessor to the legendary E49, and it proved that Chrysler's Hemi 6 concept had serious potential. Under the bonnet sat the 265 cubic inch Hemi 6, fitted with triple Weber carburetors and tuned to produce around 280 horsepower. Quarter-mile times came in around 14.8 seconds, and top speed was around 200 kilometers per hour. Those are very impressive figures for a six-cylinder in the early 1970s. The E38 was significant because it challenged the assumption that only V8s could deliver muscle car performance. Chrysler proved that with proper engineering, that a 6 could compete. Only a limited number were built for homologation purposes, making the E38 rare even when new. Today, it's overshadowed by the E49 that followed, but the 38 deserves recognition for starting something special. This Torana proved you didn't need a V8 to build a genuinely quick car. Powered by Holden's 3.3-liter inline 6 fitted with triple carburetors, it produced around 160 horsepower. That doesn't sound like much compared to the V8s on this list, but in a car weighing just over a ton, it was enough. 0 to 100 came up in around 8 seconds. Quarter-mile times were in the 16-second range. Top speed was around 190 kilometers per hour. For a naturally aspirated six-cylinder, those were exceptional numbers. The XU1's real advantage was handling. Lightweight, sharp steering, and excellent balance. On twisty roads or tight circuits, it could embarrass heavier, more powerful cars. Peter Brock proved that at Bathurst in 1972, taking victory in wet conditions, where the lightweight Torana's advantages were magnified. The XU1 became a legend, not just for its performance, but for what it represented. Smart engineering beating brute force. It was proof that Australian manufacturers understood more than just dropping big engines into big cars. But the XU1 was just the beginning of the lightweight performance story. Ford had V8 powered Falcons that would dominate highways for the rest of the decade. The Ford Falcon XA preceded the XB and shared the same basic mechanical package, the 351 Cleveland V8 producing around 300 horsepower. Top speed was in the 210 to 220 km/h range in road trim, some serious performance for a big four-door sedan. The XA established the styling direction Ford would follow through the mid-1970s, sleeker than the earlier XY, more aerodynamic, better suited to sustained high-speed running on Australian highways. Acceleration was strong. The Cleveland's torque delivery made the car feel faster than the numbers suggested. It could hold highway speeds effortlessly and had enough power in reserve to make overtaking safe and decisive. The XA GT represented Ford's commitment to performance even as the regulatory environment was changing. It proved you could build a fast car that was also practical, comfortable, and suitable for daily use. But it was still a step below the ultimate Falcon that came before it. The Ford Falcon XB continued Ford's GT lineage after the Phase 3 era ended. Powered by the 351 cubic inch Cleveland V8, it produced around 300 horsepower. well enough to push the big Falcon sedan past 210 km per hour in well-geared road trim. This car's mid-range acceleration was brutal. That Cleveland V8 delivered strong torque across the rev range, making overtaking effortless and highway driving relaxed. 0 to 100 came up in the low to mid 7-second range, depending on specification and conditions. The XB became famous when a modified version appeared in Mad Max as the Pursuit Special, but the standard one was already imposing: aggressive styling, twin bonnet scoops, and a presence that announced its capabilities before you even heard the engine start. Ford built the XB knowing it would be one of the last truly high-performance Falcons before emissions and insurance pressures forced them to prioritize efficiency over outright speed. It represented the end of an era, and enthusiasts knew it. The GTS 350 kicked off the 1970s as one of Holden's flagship muscle coupes. Under that long bonnet sat Chevrolet's 5.7-liter small block V8, producing around 300 horsepower in its early specification. 0 to 100 km per hour came up in the mid-6-second range for well-sorted examples, genuinely quick for the early 1970s. Top speed was in the 190 to 200 km per hour range, making it competitive with the best V8 sedans and coupes of its era. The HQ represented the final evolution of Holden's original Monaro muscle car lineage before emissions regulations and the Supercar Scare forced manufacturers to dial everything back. It was a big, comfortable grand tourer that could also embarrass cars costing twice as much when the road opened up. The Monaro combined American V8 power with Australian engineering and proved Holden could build a genuine muscle car that worked on Australian roads. But Holden wasn't satisfied with just building fast coupes. They were developing lightweight performance platforms that would dominate Australian racing. This Torana took the lightweight Torana platform and fitted it with Holden's 5.0-liter V8. The result was a car that combined the XU1's agility with genuine V8 power. Now, I'm not completely sure about this, but I think around 250 L34s were built for homologation purposes. If anyone has the exact production numbers, drop them in the comments. Homologation figures from this era can be tricky to verify. The L34 delivered strong torque and mid-range punch. It was developed as the basis for Holden's racing program and proved highly competitive in Group C touring car competition throughout the mid-1970s. On the road, this car was a serious performance machine. The combination of lightweight, V8 power, and sorted suspension made it one of the most complete driver's cars Australia produced during the decade. It could accelerate hard, handle well, and stop effectively. Qualities not all muscle cars of the era could claim. The L34 represented Holden's commitment to racing success and proved the Torana platform could handle serious power when properly developed. But Holden wasn't finished with the Torana, because later in the decade they'd build an even faster version that would dominate Bathurst and become a legend. The Torana A9X was Holden's ultimate evolution of the Torana platform. Built for Group C homologation, it featured comprehensive upgrades, strengthened differential, upgraded suspension, rear disc brakes, and weight reduction throughout. The road-going version used a detuned 5.0-liter V8 compared to the racing spec, but it was still genuinely quick. 0 to 100 km per hour came up in around 7 seconds. Quarter-mile times were in the 14.5-second range. Now, I'm not certain about this, but I believe the top speed was around 200 to 210 km per hour based on period testing. Some sources claim higher figures, but realistic road spec top speed was likely in that range. What made the A9X legendary wasn't just straight-line speed, it was the complete package. At the 1979 Bathurst 1000, Peter Brock and Jim Richards won by 6 laps, one of the most dominant performances in Australian touring car history. Today, this machine in original condition is among the most valuable Australian muscle cars, with prices climbing into the hundreds of thousands. It represents the absolute peak of what the Torana platform achieved. We're now entering the top 3, and these cars weren't just fast for Australia, they were fast compared to anything in the world at the time. Before the legendary Phase 3, there was the Phase 2, and it was already a monster. Released in 1970, the Phase 2 was powered by Ford's 351 cubic-inch Cleveland V8, producing around 300 horsepower. 0 to 100 came up in around 6.7 seconds. Top speed was approximately 220 kilometers per hour. Phenomenal performance for a four-door sedan in 1970. Quarter-mile times were in the low 14-second range. The Phase 2 established the GTHO formula that would be perfected with the Phase 3. Race-derived suspension, heavy-duty brakes, close-ratio gearbox, everything was built to handle sustained high-speed running and competition use. Harry Firth drove a Phase 2 to victory at the 1970 Bathurst 500. Proving the car's capabilities weren't just about straight-line speed. It could handle, it could brake, it could win Australia's most demanding race. The Phase 2 represented Ford's commitment to building the fastest production sedan they could. It set the stage for what came next, but it was already faster than almost anything else on Australian roads. Today, genuine Phase 2s are highly collectible, though they're often overshadowed by the Phase 3 that followed. But while Ford was perfecting V8 performance, Chrysler was proving something remarkable, that a six-cylinder could match the V8s outright. The Chrysler Valiant Charger E49 was one of the most significant performance cars Australia ever produced. Want to know why? Because it proved a six-cylinder could genuinely compete with V8s on equal terms. The engine was Chrysler's 4.3-liter Hemi 6, fitted with triple Weber carburetors and tuned to produce 302 horsepower. That matched the power claims of Ford's and Holden's flagship V8s, but from two fewer cylinders and significantly less displacement. Quarter-mile times were reported around 14 seconds. 0 to 100 came up in the mid-6-second range. Top speed was in the 210 to 215 km/h range based on period testing. Those numbers put the E49 firmly among the fastest Australian cars of the early 1970s, regardless of engine configuration. Only 149 were built, making it rare even when new. Today, authenticated E49s sell for between $500,000 and $600,000 at auction. They represent a peak of Australian automotive engineering, a moment when local manufacturers proved they could build world-class performance machinery. The E49 challenged everything people thought they knew about six-cylinder performance, and it did so while being lighter and more fuel-efficient than the V8 competition. But there was one car that stood above everything else, the fastest Australian street car of the 1970s, and it held a world record. The Phase 3 wasn't just the fastest Australian street car of the 1970s. That official 227.7 km/h top speed wasn't just fast for Australia, it was officially recorded as the fastest production sedan in the world. At the time, it was tested. Powered by the 5.75-liter Cleveland V8, it produced an official 300 horsepower, though actual output was likely higher. 0 to 100 came up in around 6.4 seconds. Quarter-mile times were in the 14.2 to 14.4 second range. And that crushing top speed that nothing else could match. Alan Moffat drove one to victory at the 1971 Bathurst 500, cementing the Phase 3's reputation as not just quick in a straight line, but capable of winning Australia's most demanding race. The Phase 3 represents the moment Australian automotive engineering reached its peak. It proved that distance from Detroit didn't mean accepting second best. Australia could build a car that competed with and beat anything in the world. That's why genuine Phase 3s sell for over $1.5 million today. They're not just collectible muscle cars, they're proof of what Australian engineering achieved when given the freedom to pursue performance without compromise. Each one of these 10 cars represented a moment when Australian manufacturers were building world-class performance machinery. From the E38 Charger that started the six-cylinder revolution to the Phase 3 that set a world record, these weren't just quick cars for Australia. Some of them were the quickest cars in the world. The 1970s was a golden age that ended too soon. Emissions regulations, insurance pressures, political interference, all combined to kill the muscle car era before its full potential could be realized. But for those few years, if you wanted the fastest car money could buy, you didn't need to import anything. You could walk into a Ford or Holden or Chrysler dealership and drive out in a car that could embarrass Corvettes, Mustangs, and European sports cars costing twice as much. That era won't return, but the cars remain as proof of what was achieved, and their values keep climbing as collectors recognize what they represent, the pinnacle of Australian automotive performance.